Hi, I'm Devin Dean, Content Director here at ProjectManager.com. As a project manager, it's your role to actively manage the messages emanating from your project team, project deliverables, and the project artifacts that your sponsors, users, and wider audience come in contact with your project. It's quite normal for high visibility projects to have a level of misconceptions or rumors spreading about your project which are inaccurate. But look, as your job as a project manager, one of them is to make sure that the wider audience has the accurate information about your project. These rumors and misconceptions don't take hold, at worst multiply, which could cause you extra time and energy to go back and try and re-evaluate everyone and get them back on the same page. Or at worst, if these rumors and misconceptions persist and multiply, they can actually kill your project. Now, I use a communications plan to help me manage my communications. Usually the communications plan is done at the start of a project during the planning phases, and it's used to describe how the project intends to communicate the right messages to the right people at the right times. Now, they can be as simple as or as complex as you need them to be. Some projects even have a person dedicated to managing those communications, a person whose sole job it is to market or to provide public relations about your project to the wider audience. I like to start simple at first by plotting out all the touch points that users and stakeholders need to have at a project, and then work a different higher level of complexity as needed from there. So what we're going to talk about today is about that communications plan. It's about the elements that you need to put in the communications plan so that you as a project manager can have a good understanding about how you're going to manage those communications coming out of your project. Now, I start with two matrices usually. The first one is about communications plan by item, and the second matrix I use is a communications plan by person. If you're really clever with Excel, you can combine these into a single spreadsheet, and you can do some clever filters or pivot tables, if you will, on the different messages and who needs to receive what by whom. But usually I like to keep it simple, and I'll have two different matrices plotted. So I'd like to take you through what the key elements are of each of those matrices now, just so that you get a better understanding of what that communications plan is and how to actually use it during the execution phase. So first off, communications plan by item or event. So quite simply, on the left-hand side, I put the item or event that is the communication event or item. So it could be as simple as a status report, it could be a kickoff presentation, or even a training event, because a training event, as an example, you wouldn't think they're a good communications event, but look, it's a way for people to get a perception about your project. So actually it is a communications event, and you need to manage that. So for our example, I've used a training event as our item to plot, touch point to plot. So next, after that item and event, is the purpose. What is the purpose of the communications event that is happening? So in this case, it's to provide users with basic training on the system. Next is the audience. Who's going to receive that message? It's important to tailor your communications to the audience that's receiving it. So it's absolutely important on the communications plan to plot out who is going to actually receive that message. Next is the date or frequency of that item or event. For a training event like this, usually they'll happen about 4 weeks ahead of go live or whatever system you're rolling out. Next, who is responsible for communicating or managing that event or item to the wider audience? In this case, it's our customer operations manager. So she or he has got the job of running that training event and ensuring all the messages and all the items that are composed in that training event happen according to plan. Lastly, who's got the authority to release that communications or have that event happen? So in this case, the project manager, which would be me, or the HR manager, who would be looking after the skills and competencies of the users getting that training. The next matrix I like to use is the communications plan by person. Now this is really important for your key stakeholders or sponsors of your project. Make sure you have a different item for each of your sponsors or stakeholders so that you're managing the communications to them. So for us, in this case, Josie Smith is our stakeholder that needs to receive certain messages about the project. What is her title? So she's the head of customer management. What's her role on the project? Well, she's the sponsor. She's the one actually funding that project. So it's important to know what her job is, what her role in the project is, and also what are the events that she needs to be across, or what are the communication items that she needs to receive. So in this example, it's a go-live presentation to the executive leadership team. Now that item or event is what is going to be communicated to her. And in fact, in this instance, she's the one communicating the messages. So what do we need in terms of special instructions about Josie? Well, I know that Josie's actually a little bit nervous in front of a large crowd of people. So we need to make sure that we rehearse with her that particular briefing to the executive leadership team many, many times before the actual event. As you can see, by plotting these different touch points out, as a project manager, you can start getting your head around the messages that need to emanate from your project, who needs to actually spread those messages, and how you need to spread that message to the wider audience. The communications plan is the way to get all that together in one single place. Once you have that plotted, make sure you actively manage it during project execution so that you can add or adjust as necessary as the project changes, stakeholders come in and out, or if your user community grows wider. Hopefully today's lesson has given you a snapshot on what to do, what to put into a communications plan, and actually how to use that during your project execution. For more project management tips and tricks, and to try out our software, come join us at projectmanager.com.